Today's daf we're going to be learning is Shevuot daf kafbet. Today's daf is sponsored. Don't have it in front of me. Today's daf is sponsored by Rabbi Art Gould in gratitude of the love and support of the Hadran family during his latest medical misadventures. Wash them out to you. Okay, we are going to get started with our Mishnah. We're going to go back for a quick minute or for a little bit to the machloket between, and what we're going to deal with today is the machloket between the rabbis and Chachamim. I'm sorry, the rabbis and Rabbi Akiva about whether you're ochel kolshehu, right? You took an oath. Does that include a kolshehu? If I say, I swear I won't eat this loaf, does that mean any bit of this loaf? Or does it go to regular shiur achilav kizayit? So what's important right now to deal with is the language that Rabbi Akiva, is what the rabbi said to Rabbi Akiva, and Rabbi Akiva said to the rabbis. We're going to check both of these sentences. Are they really true? So let's go first through the sentences in the Mishnah on Yud Tet Amud Bet. Amrula le Rabbi Akiva. They said to Rabbi Akiva, you say you're chayav for eating a kazayit, for less than a kazayit, for anything. Where else do we have any example? It sounds like they think there's no example where you're liable for less than a kazayit. That's what we're going to check. What do you mean? There's this case, there's that case. There's all sorts of cases where you actually are liable for less than a kazayit of eating, and we're going to check each one and explain why that's different. Then Rabbi Akiva said, Rabbi Akiva says, this is unique. Why is it unique? Because there's no other case, right? Each of them are talking in superlatives, right? There's no other case. There's no other case where somebody speaks and on account of their speech brings a korban. We're going to have to check. Is that really true? We're going to bring a whole slew of cases where you speak and you do bring a korban after speaking because of your speech. We're going to see. So in both cases, we're going to have to explain why all those other things that do seem to fit into each of these categories is not exactly a problem because each one has their own reason why, and it's not the same as here. So let's start with the bottom of Kaf Aleph a bit. Amrulo, the Rabbi Akiva Chamatzina, where do we see? To which the Gemara says below, Vaharene Mala, eating an ant. Okay, we know bugs, that's why people are very careful about washing their vegetables. Bugs are liable for one eating one bug. There's an ant in your food. That's it, right? I was washing my lettuce yesterday. I saw a big dead bug in there, right? Had I eaten it, luckily I was washing it at the time, I hadn't put it in my salad yet, right? Had I eaten it, it would have been a problem. So that's clearly less than a kazayit. Well, that's very famous. Okay, whether you pronounce it bria or biria, there's different pronunciations, but it's a complete being. Bria shane or biria shane, this is different. It's a complete creature. That makes it whole, unique exception. It's what we call it gives it significance. Okay, maybe unpleasant significance, but it becomes a significant being. It is a significant being, and that makes it significant that for this case, you wouldn't have a kazayit. You wouldn't need that. Vare hekdesh. Hekdesh, in order to be liable a korban, basically you don't need a kizayit of misuse of consecrated property. If I misuse consecrated property, there's no minimum amount of an olive bulk that I used, or let's say I ate something that was supposed to be, was supposed to be sanctified. So they say you don't need this requisite amount of a kazayit. So, but you still do need a requisite amount. Having a pruta, it has different definitions. The definition there are different requisite amounts. It has a requisite amount. It's just different. It's not measured in weight or size. It's measured in value because for misuse of consecrated property, the question is how much should you benefit? And that's measured in value rather than in size, but it still has a requisite amount. Hare mefaresh. What if I specify in my oath? And this we talked about yesterday. They all agree that if I say I won't eat a bit of this, then you're obligated at a bit. So there you have a case where you will be. So they say, no, that's mefarish nami kibiria dami. That's also because it's like a complete being because you gave it significance. It's all about the significance. Bare afar. Okay, what about dust? Okay, now dust, let's say I eat dust. I say, take an oath I'm not going to eat, and then I eat dust. Okay, so now the question is, right, that sounds like since it's not food, there won't be any requisite amount because it's not an act of eating. Kazayit is all associated with an act of eating. So they say, wait, if it's so clear about dust that I won't need a kazayit, then, and that's basically, we're raising it as a question here, then elatifshot, now we don't know this yet, but later in the daf, Rav is going to ask, what about dust? Okay, what about eating dust? So tifshot to buy Rava, if it's so clear from here, what the Gemara is assuming, which is for a far, you'd be liable even less than a kazayit. Well, if it's so obvious from the Mishnah, then they would have used our Mishnah to answer Rava's question. We're going to see that Rava's question is left as a teku. We don't have an answer. So if it's so clear from the Mishnah, what we're suggesting, right, that, oh, well, not, right, what about dust? If we think it's so obvious that it's less than a kazayit, then we should have an easy answer then to Rava's question. When here's his question that we're going to see later on in the daf. Shvuah shelo achal, if you took an oath, I'm not going to eat. And then achal afar, and then you ate dust. Okay, it could be dust, dirt, earth, whatever, something. Bikama, how much? Now, we don't know, right? Rava doesn't know, and we don't answer the question. But if we assume here that afar, you're liable for less than a kazayit because it's not something edible, well, tifshot adika, or if we said it was a kazayit, right? Tifshot adika kazayit. In other words, we could say from here, the fact, in other words, if you want to say afar, and then we want to say, well, maybe afar does require an olive bulk, then we would have an answer. So they say, okay, the afar is irrelevant because ki ka'amrina b'midi debar achila ka'amrina. When the rabbi said there's no case where there's no other case where you're not obligated unless there's a kazayit, and then you want to say, well, then dust should require a kazayit. No, they weren't talking about dust. They were talking about isurei achila. There's no issue of eating dust. That's not food. It was talking about edible items, not inedible items. So the afar is totally irrelevant here. Bahare konamot. Okay, konamot is going to be a big topic of ours today. So let's give some background on konamot. Konamot is a type of vow. Okay, vows often you have to say like, this is forbidden to me like a korban, or like, okay, you might remember this from Nidarim. Korban, ke, all these languages. Ke konam. Konam, okay, or you could say konam kikar zoalai. That's the language Rashi uses. Konam is like a language of a sacrifice. It's basically, you're saying, this item is hekdesh to me. Now, normally when you're makdish an item, you sanctify it, the item becomes sanctified. It's what we call an isur chepta. We've been talking about the difference about the Shevuot and the neder. Now, when you say something's hekdesh, you're making the object hekdesh, which means it's hekdesh to everybody in the world. This has a title sanctifying on it. That's why often you end up with problems of what we call meila. What's meila? Misuse of consecrated property accidentally, because not everybody knows that you made it sanctified. Konam is different. Konam is like I'm saying this item is hekdesh or like hekdesh to me only. So if you use it or eat it, there's nothing wrong with it. I can't benefit from it, which means also I can't eat it, right? It's basically taking a kind of vow, forbidding a particular item upon yourself. Now, konamot, when you say this is like a korban, you're forbidden to eat any little bit of it. And that seems to be an agreed point, although we're going to talk about it later. But it sounds like you're forbidden any sort of amount. So what do you see? Here we have an isur achila. That's it, anything. So they say, konamot nami kimefarish tami. When you call something a konam, it's like you're saying this whole thing has significance to me that I'm going to stay away from every part of it. And even if I eat a little bit, right, I'll be obligated. That's not the same as saying Shavua shelo ochal, because the shvuah is on you that I won't eat this item. But it's not like taking the item and saying every single part of this is sanctified. No, konam is a different beast, and because of that, it's like you're giving it significance by calling it konam. Whereas in the shvuah, it's on you, and not on the item. So it's different. And therefore, again, we're left with, right, according to the rabbis, shvuah is isur achila on yourself, and isur achila is defined by kazayit. So we had a slew of these questions. I didn't count how many, but maybe about 5. And basically, we resolve all the difficulties. And again, the problem is with the line that the rabbis say, there is no precedent for being liable for less than a kazayit. We bring all these examples, okay, but each one had its own unique circumstances and therefore wasn't a difficulty. Now we're going to move to that second line of what Rabbi Akiva said to the rabbis and check this. Is there really no place where basically Rabbi Akiva's answer is our case is unique because it's the only situation where you speak, and on account of your speech, you now have to bring a korban. Okay, let's check this out. Velo, really not. V'harei migadef, if you curse God, midaber period. If you curse God. Now, here we have a machloket actually, and Rabbi Akiva holds against the rabbis that you actually have to bring a korban. It's in Kritu. We haven't gotten to it yet, but migadef may be korban according to Rabbi Akiva. So he says, there's an example. you speak because you curse God, and you have to bring a korban, a sacrifice. So the Gemara says, no, that's not a good example because midaber, it's not the same kind of dibur to korban. How do you say it? The dibur pattern that causes a korban, because what happens here in the Shevuot is a unique thing. It's midaber ve'oser ka'amrina. I speak, I create a prohibition in my speech, and from that prohibition, if I go against it, I'm liable a korban. So my speech actually generates a prohibition. That's unique. That's not the same. Hai medaber v'choteu, the megadev, the one who curses God with words, and in those words has already done the prohibition. This is something unique that you're creating a prohibition from your words. Okay, well, we actually see precedent for that as well. V'harei nazir. What does a nazir do? The nazir's words, I will be a nazir, takes upon himself nazirut or herself nazirut. Then what happens? Then they become a nazir based on their words. That generates all sorts of prohibitions. And in the end of the process, they have to bring a korban. Right? You bring a series of korbanot, the nazir, at the end of their nazirut. So they say no. That's mevi korbanot. By us, we were talking about mevi korbanot diburo kamrian. In our situation, I create, again, let's go back to what we said. I generated a prohibition from my words, and then I transgressed, I went against it, and I was liable a korban. The korban of the nazir, it's true, it's because the nazir said I'm going to be a nazir. But the reason to bring the korban is not because I went against what I said when I said I was going to be a nazir. It's the purpose of the sacrifice is to basically create an end, like a ceremony to end the nizirut and to permit myself to drink wine and do all the things I was forbidden to do. So that's different. That's, again, the korban is not coming because I created a prohibition and now I transgressed the prohibition and I'm obligated to korban. The korban has a totally different purpose. It's not the same. Okay, vare hekdesh. What about hekdesh? I say this item is sanctified. And then if me or anyone else uses it accidentally, they have to bring a korban asham meila. So my words generated a prohibition. And then by transgressing this prohibition, someone's obligated to sacrifice. So they say, Oser la'atzmo ka'amrina, v'hai oser kol olam kulo. We were talking about a situation where my words forbid myself only. That's what's unique about this situation, and then generates a chiyuv korban for me alone. But the hekdesh creates sanctity on an item that then everyone's going to be obligated to korban. So it's not the same. Pare konamot. Okay, what about konam? Now we're really stuck because konam, my words, create a prohibition for me only. Okay, konam kikar alai. I can't use that kikar. If anybody else does, then what happens? If anybody else does, then basically they're going to be liable a korban. I'm sorry, they won't be liable a korban, but I will be if I use it. So there you have a problem. Not such a problem because there's a big debate about which we're going to get to more into today. Is there meila in konamot or not? Meaning, because in hekdesh, I've created objectively this object has sanctity to it for everybody. Because it has sanctity for everybody, that's what meila is, misuse of consecrated property. There's a big debate in konam. Because konam, it's only considered sanctified for me only. So there's a debate whether I bring a korban asham meilot or not. So we're going to say that Rabbi Akiva must hold, he must hold on the side of the debate that there's no meila for konam, and that's why he brought this as Shevuot is the only example where this happens. Okay, and that ends our discussion with those two lines in the Mishna. The rabbis comment to Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Akiva's retort, and we check them out, and they do hold to be true. Okay, even though we had a lot of difficulties with each of them. Okay, now we're going to have three limitations of this machloket. Okay, two by Rava, one by Rav Pappa. There's going to be a theme today of two of Rava and then one of someone else. It's going to be at the end of the daf, three questions. Rava asks two, and then Rav Ashi asks one. So I'm a Rav. Machloket b'stam, abba b'mefarish divrei hakol b'koshu. We actually already said this, right? The machloket between them is if I just say shvur shelo chal. Okay, I won't eat, this loaf. But if I say I won't eat any of this loaf, then everyone agrees that I'm obligated by eating mashim. That we discussed, and we even said, right, my taima, we're going to repeat what we said before, mefarish nami kibir yadami, because since I said I won't even eat a bit of this loaf, That already means I'm giving a bit of its significance. Ve'amar Rava, machloket b'shelo ochal, aval b'shelo etom. If I say I won't taste this loaf, okay, this is all lashon achila. Achila goes with kizayit, an olive bulk. But if I say I won't taste, divrei hakol b'koshu, everybody agrees taste is any little bit. So the Gemara says, pshita, isn't that obvious? Well, no, because ma'u detami, you might have thought, litom nami kida'amri inashe. This goes by the way people talk on the street. If I say, let's go have a taste of some food, what do I mean? Let's go eat. Okay. And some people use those words interchangeably. We're actually going to see a case of that later today. Kamash malan. So what it's coming to teach you is no. But if you use the language, even though some people say, let's go taste something, and they really mean let's go eat. I don't know if people really use that nowadays, but then I guess people did. So you might have thought that, but no. Still, if I say I'm not going to, right? If I say I'm not going to taste, what you mean in this context is I'm not going to eat any little bit of it. And then everyone agrees, even the rabbis, you'll be chayav for mashu, for a koshu. Okay, that's Rav. Two limitations, mefarish and right, not in mefarish. They're all going to agree that mashu and also lo et om. That's true, Eric. Go out for a bite. If you say, oh, let's go out for a bite, you don't really mean a bite. You mean food. That's a good explanation. I'm a Rav Pappa. Now Rav Pappa comes in. This is going to be the complicated part of today's daf, so brace yourselves, organize it well, but get ready. Machloket b'shvuot, aval b'konamot divrei hakol b'kolshu. Okay, this we already learned. The konam, you'll be liable for any little amount. That's what we asked the question before. What about konamot? You're liable for any amount, right? So the machloket is if you say, I swear I won't eat, then there's a machloket, kolshu or kizayit. But if you say konam kikar ze'alai, you obviously mean any bit. Okay, that's not so hard. But now we're going to move forward and get to something complicated. So first we're going to say my time. Okay, why is this? Konamot, okay, this is also easy. Konamot nami kevan de lo midkar shma da'achila kidem mefarishtam. They say, what's the reason? Because konamot, I'll go through the words, nami, gam, also. Kevan de lo midkar shma da'achila. You didn't midkar, dalet and zayin switch in Aramaic. It's mizkar. You don't maskil. You didn't mention shma, the name of achila. You didn't mention the word achila in your sentence. You said konam this kikar on me. Okay, this loaf on me will be konam. You didn't say konam I won't eat this loaf. If you use the word eating in it, then you would eat immediately means, right? Ding, 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 kizayit. You say konam, oh, that's the whole thing. Okay, and therefore it's like mifarish. It's like you said, I won't eat a bit of it. Okay. That's easy. But now we get to a contradiction. This assumes, just to be very clear, this assumes konam has no requisite amount. You say konam, you're forbidden at anything. Well, this braita clearly thinks you need a shiur because the machloket in the braita is going to be, if you say two konams, okay, you say konam kikar ze'alai, you're konam two different loaves. Okay, we're going to get to exactly how you said this, but somehow you did konam on two loaves and you ate a bit of one and a bit of the other. Do we join it together? That's what the braita is talking about. Now, meaning if you didn't eat a kazayit of this one and you didn't eat a kazayit of this one, but you ate half a kazayit of this and half a kazayit of that, or 3/4 and a quarter, any combination, if you put them together, did you get to a kazayit? Can we do that? Well, that assumes you need a kazayit to be liable, which goes completely against what Rav Pappa just said. That's the problem. So let's read it inside of Meitive. Shnei konamot mitzdarfin. According to Tanakama, two konamot go together, meaning you forbade two different loaves, and you ate a bit of one and a bit of the other. Altogether, it comes out to a kazayit, an olive bulk. You can combine that together and basically in a bad way, because now you're obligated. Shtei shvuot emet starfot. But if I say, I take an oath that I won't eat this, and I take an oath that I won't eat that, then I eat a bit of one and a bit of the other, you don't join them together. Okay, we're going to have to see what's the difference between konam and shvua. But one of the differences is that the shvuot is I won't eat this and I won't eat that. So basically, each one is kind of viewed independently. I won't eat this and I won't eat that, and each one is a separate shvuah. We're going to see why we're going to separate them or not. Rabbi Meir, we don't really know yet. Rabbi Meir omer konamot kishvuot. Rabbi Meir says no, konamot are like shvuot, meaning what we assume this means is since shvuot you don't combine, also konamot you don't combine. But whether they argue about whether konamot are like shvuot or not, and you combine or you don't combine them, either which way, they both agree that there's some requisite amount needed for a konam, and it's not mashu. Otherwise, why would we be talking about combining? That's what the Gemara is going to say now. If you think, like Rav Pappa said, that everyone agrees that any little amount you eat, you're liable, then why are we talking about seif? So, Da'amar achila mizo alai konam. First answer is, you must have used the language of eating in your konam. Okay, once you say eating, what do we say? Oh, once you use the word eat, that means kazayit. So, you said achila mizo alai konam, achila mizo alai konam. Okay, eating from this one is konam, eating from that one is konam, and then they combine. Now they say, wait a minute, that doesn't make any sense. They would combine. Ihachi amay mitzdarfo. Sof, zil lahacha lekashira, v'zil lahacha lekashira. If I say, konam this loaf on me, and konam that loaf on me, I said two totally separate things. Why would I ever think to combine the two? That doesn't make any sense. Okay, so if I say konam, that I will not eat this, right? I will not eat this loaf, or konam that I will not eat this loaf. They're two separate konams. There's no way I would ever think to combine them. So it can't be that. So we keep fixing this a little bit till we get it right. So now they say, De'amal achila mishtehen alai konam. And the way they explain this is, I say konam, right? Achila mishtehem alai konam. But you say achila mizo umizo alai konam. If you say shtehem, they're clearly together. But if you say achila from this loaf and that loaf is konam to me in one sentence. So then we're going to combine the konams together. And then we're going to say they're mitzdarfim according to Tanakama. According to Rabbi Meir, they're not. We're going to see why. Okay, but that's what we're talking about. So I use the language of achila, and that's why kazayit. Okay, and if you want to say why I'm liable both, right, both combined, is because it was all one sentence. It wasn't konam this on me, and right, konam eating this on me, and konam eating this on me. No, it's you said this and this in one sentence with one konam and one achila. Okay, it was all one kind of sentence. Okay, well now the problem is, well, what's the parallel case? It was clear in the braita, according to all the opinions, that Shevuot doesn't work. So let's say, you can't combine them. So now, if I said this by Shevuot, okay, Shevuot shelo ochal mizo umizo, right? I take an oath, I'm not going to eat from this and this. Why wouldn't they combine, right? You would think there's one Shevuot and two statements that I said. So, the Amar Shevuot shelo ochal mishtehen amay em mitzdarfim. Why wouldn't they combine? So Amar Rav Pinchas now explains, Shane Shvuot, mitoch shachalukot lechata'ot and mitzdarfot. Okay, now we're going to say, they're chalukot lechata'ot. Okay, Rashi explains, mitoch shesheki karot halalu chashuvot shtayim le'inyan chata b'shvuah. Okay, and this we're going to see in the next Mishna. Okay, if you say, I won't eat pat chitin, okay, Rashi quotes this, pat, right, bread of wheat, pat seorim, bread of barley, and pat kusmin, and then you eat. Even though I said one shvuah, but I said three separate things, I'm liable on each one. Okay, if I ate pat kusmin and pat chitim and pat seorim, I have to bring a korban on each one. So since by shvuah they're separated, and I have to bring, even though one language of oath, one word oath, with three different items or two different items, whatever it is, means I have to bring a separate korban on each one of them. Well, that's why they're not mitzdarfot. Because even though I say Shvuah, shelo chal mizo, since I bring separate korbanot chatat, if I ate that one and ate that one, then I would, right, meaning I forgot my Shvuah and then I ate them by accident, I would bring a separate korban chatat. Therefore, they don't combine. Okay, that just explains why the Shvuah don't combine and the konam does, according to the Tanakama. Okay, now we have to explain Rabbi Meir, who thinks, now by konam, that's not true. So that's why konam, it's viewed as one. There's no inyan of chiluk l'chataot. So now if we're explaining the whole Tanakama based on this chiluk l'chataot, and that explains why he differentiates between konam and shvuah, how are we going to explain Rabbi Meir that says that konam is like shvuah and they don't combine? So again, I just want to remind you, we got to all this because we were trying to figure out there clearly is a requisite amount for konam in this. And that disagrees with Rav Pappa, who said everyone agrees konam is anything. To answer it, we had to say, you said konam achila mizo umizo alai, right? Konam achila mizo konam alai, or something like that, where you use the word achila, you use the word konam, you put the two together, right? You said this one and this one, all in that one sentence. And that's why konam. We're going to view this all as one, and then we'll combine, and then you need a requisite amount because you use the word achila, right? The whole answer here is that the word achila has to be in there. Otherwise, for sure, it wouldn't be. Otherwise, it would be regular konam. Regular konam doesn't have a requisite amount. Because you added the word achila, that adds requisite amount. That's this answer. But what we're doing now is we're trying to figure out, does this answer really stand up to the test? Does it make sense? Because now we're a little bit stuck. Because according to that answer, right, where you combine this all in one sentence, it explains the difference between konam and shvua. But what about Rabbi Meir, who says konam and shvua are all the same? Okay, and that's because there's a unique difference between shvua and konam. That shvua you would have separate chatats, and konam you would. So we hachi Rabbi Meir omer konamot shvuot. Bishlam shvua, I get why shvua, because according to what Rav Pinchas said, and that's how we explained it. But konamot am I love? Then why not konamot? So they say ipuch. Change what Rabbi Meir said. In order to make this make sense, we have to say the opposite. Rabbi Meir omer shvuot kikonamot v'leile Rav Pinchas. Rabbi Meir says shvuot are like konamot, meaning they are mitzdaref. They combine, just like konam combines, shvuot combine, and he just doesn't hold like Rav Pinchas. He doesn't think that just because they're chaluchot l'chataot, therefore they won't be mitzdaref. He thinks those two things don't go together. Okay? He agrees that they're chalukot l'chataot. He just doesn't agree that even though you're going to get separate korbanot chatat if you did this and did that, the two that you combine together, it doesn't mean that those two things can't combine. If you say, I won't eat from this and this, and then you eat a bit of each, you could be liable for one. So that's how we in the end explain it. So we have some weaknesses with this approach. Number one, we had to have added that you've said in the konam lashon of achila, because otherwise there would be no kazayit. And then we had to switch what Rabbi Meir says, otherwise it doesn't make any sense. And you have to say that Shvuot is like konamot and not konamot is like Shvuot, meaning neither of them, both of them combined together instead of saying neither of them combined. That's answer number one. Answer number two, Ravina Amar. Ki ka'amar Rav Pappa, le'inyan malkot, ki tanyahi le'inyan korban, debi'inan shevet pruta. This is a bit of an easier answer. When Rav Pappa said, machloka b'shvuah, but konamot, everyone agrees b'kolshu, that's if you did it intentionally and you're getting lashes for it. For that, a kolshu, you went against your konam. But if you said konam kikar alai and then accidentally used it and benefited from it, and you're chayav a korban meila, well, to be chayav a korban, it needs to have the value of a shevet pruta. And then the tseruf is not tseruf to kizayit, it's tseruf for value. Remember, we talked about that. Meila, it's all about value. And then we're going to say, okay, that's something different. In the world of korbanot, there's different requirements than the world of lashes. We actually talked about this yesterday because we said Rabbi Shimon, right, doesn't require a minimum amount for eating for malkot, but he does require it for korban. Same thing here. When it comes to the world of sacrifices, there's different criteria, and that's a very easy way to resolve this. Papa was talking about lashes. The braita was talking about sacrifices. There's only one big problem, which is, I mentioned before, the Gemara mentioned, that konamot, there's a machloket about whether there's meila b'konamot or not. Now, if you don't think there's meila, then you don't think there's a korban. Okay? So this is going to make no sense according to the one who says that there's no korban meila. And not only that, we're going to see the machloket is between Rabbi Meir and Chachamim. And those are the two people arguing here. And everybody thinks you need a requisite amount here in the braita. It's just a matter of do they combine or do they not combine, which means how could they both require a requisite amount if there's no korban at all? If the whole topic is korban and not everybody thinks there is a korban, okay, that's a huge problem. We're going to get to that. I'm just sort of giving it to you outside. Now we're going to start reading. So right now we're going to deal just with the rabbi's opinion, the first opinion. The Meimer de Rabbanit Savra Yesh Meila b'konamot. Wait, that implies that the rabbis think there's meila, because if we're talking about korban is korban because you misuse consecrated property, and you're only going to be chayav if you say there's meila. And again, saying yesh meila b'konamot means if you benefit from the object that you made konam, you have to bring a sacrifice, right? If you did it unintentionally. V'hatanya, look at this braita. Kikar zo hekdesh. We're going to differentiate between hekdesh and meila, and we talked about this before, so this should be not so complicated. Kikar zo hekdesh ve'achala. Okay, you said this is hekdesh, and then you eat it, or somebody eats it. Bein hu bein chavero ma'a. Right? Basically, anyone who uses that item that I sanctified is now that I consecrated. That item is now forbidden to anybody. Lefichach. Right, and if they use it, they're chayav meila. Lefichach yesh la pidyon. Well, that means the item is objectively kodesh, which means you can always redeem it. Kodesh can always be redeemed onto money, right? And then move the money. Sanctity goes to the money. Whatever you buy with that money will have the sanctity. You can do that. Kikar zo alai hekdesh. If you say this is for me hekdesh, which is really like konam, hu ma'al chaviro lo ma'al. Now, meila for you, but not for the other person. So there is meila according to this opinion, but in a second we're going to see this is Rabbi Meir. But there won't be meila if you use it because it's not objectively, it's only for me, it's sanctified. Lefichach ein la pidyon, therefore I can't redeem it because it doesn't have inherent sanctity. It doesn't have objective sanctity. So it can't be redeemed because it's only sanctity for me. Okay, the pidyon part isn't important, I mean, for our purposes. Divrei Rabbi Meir, turning now to Amabet, v'chachamim omrim bein hu bein chavero lo ma'al, lefi she'en meila b'konamot. Now here the rabbis say, it doesn't matter. If I say konam, this for me is hekdesh, which is konam, well, no, there's no meila at all, because since it go like this, since for you it's not sacred, then for me it's not either, which means that if it's not sacred, which means there's no misuse of consecrated property. It's not consecrated. It's just forbidden to me, but it's not hekdesh. Okay, so there's no meila. So what do you see here? The rabbis say there's no meila, but the rabbis say they are mitzdaref, which means they need a requisite amount. And what we said is that whole braita, to resolve the contradiction, Ravina said the whole braita is talking about korban. They combine for the shepherd pruta for the korban, but there is no korban. So ipuch, okay, fine. This is an easy answer. Switch who said what in the braita we just quoted, and say the last opinion which we attributed to the rabbis. There is no meila is divrei Rabbi Meir. Okay, and the rabbis say no. It's meila for him, not for his friend, which means there is meila. Okay, and that resolved. What's the problem though? Rabbi Meir omer konamot k'shvuot. Right? So Ella konamot itzdarufe hu delo mitzdarfe. Now, when Rabbi Meir says in the Mishna, in the braita, they don't combine. He still means, right? We said this from the beginning. They still both require a requisite amount. It's just a matter of can you combine the two of them or not. Ha meila ibehu, right? There is meila there. And if Rabbi Meir holds there's no meila, right? There's no korban. Again, both opinions assume that you need a requisite amount. What's the requisite amount for, according to Ravina, for the sacrifice? So Rabbi Meir now doesn't make sense. So it wasn't very helpful to flip the opinions because Rabbi Meir now makes no sense. But we have a way to read Rabbi Meir. And this we do a lot. L'divreihem de Rabbanan ka'amru. They were talking according to the rabbis, meaning Rabbi Meir was. L'didi emi laba konamot klal. And that's what happened. The rabbi said konamot can combine, Shevuot can't combine. Comes Rabbi Meir and says, I don't think you even need to combine them because there's no requisite amount required because there's no meila b'konamot. There isn't meila at all. So I wouldn't even bring a korban. Forget about needing a requisite amount. Okay? Lididi emi laba konamot klal. I would never even require a korban in this case. But lididchu, but according to you, odeli miyat. If I take your opinion seriously though, and I say you think there's a korban, but you think there's a korban and you think the konamot for these two things combine, if I think konam kikar ze'alai, konam kikar ze'alai, I'm going to combine the two. No, odeli miyat de konamot kishvuot. You should at least agree with me that konamot are like shvuot. In other words, I don't agree with you if there's a korban, but let's say I give it to you. You think there's a korban, and you think it needs a requisite amount then, right? You need this shevuot pruta. But just like shvuot don't combine, I don't think konamot should combine, and you should agree with me on that. And the rabbis obviously don't agree. Now, why don't the rabbis agree? Now, it's funny because the first opinion was based on this Rav Pinchas. So now we're going to say the machloket is, do they agree with Rav Pinchas or not? What did Rav Pinchas say? Remember? Rabbanan shvuot ikad Rav Pinchas, that what? Shvuot or chalukot lechataot, as we're going to see at the very end of today's daf. If I say, I'm not going to eat this and this and this, and then I eat those three things, I'm obligated to korban for each one. And that's why, if I take an oath, I'm not going to eat this and this and this, they don't combine. Each one is viewed totally separately. But that's not true for konamot. And therefore, I differentiate konamot. And konamot, and Rabbanan, shvuot ikad Rav Pinchas, konamot lekad Rav Pinchas. Right? So Rabbanan say, right? So again, Rabbanan say shvuot, I agree with Rav Pinchas, but konamot, no. Okay? And therefore, konamot, there isn't that issue of Rav Pinchas, and that's why the rabbis don't agree with what Rabbi Meir says. So let's just summarize very broadly what we did in this section because it's a little bit, there were just a lot of back and forths. The main thing we did was we had two ways to resolve this contradiction. Rav Pappa said konamot, there's no minimum requirement. The braita assumes there is. It's just a debate whether you can combine or not, but you need to combine to get to some requisite amount. We assume the requisite amount was kazayit. So in the first interpretation, we said it means that you said you must have added the words achila mizo kazayit. Okay, and then we had to check, does that really make sense? Eventually, it took a little while, but we figured out exactly what the wording you used was, and we had to change what Rabbi Meir says. And instead of saying konamot that are like Shevuot and they're not mitzaref, we actually say Shevuot are like konamot and they are mitzaref. And that makes sense. Then, and that was all based on Rav Pinchas and why the rabbis differentiate between, because Shevuot are chalukot lechataot and konamot are not, right? You don't bring separate chataot on a konam with a few words in it, but you do for Shevuot. Then we got to the second interpretation, which is they're talking apples and oranges. One is talking obligation of lashes, and the other is talking obligation of korban. And the requisite amount is not a kazayit. It never said kazayit anywhere. The requisite amount that we're talking about mitzdarfin is shapat pruta, and that's for the korban. Then we had this big problem because Rabbi Meir and the rabbis who disagree here about whether or not they combine, but all think you need a requisite amount, but none of them think that, but one of them thinks, at least, right? We're going to have to, we debated which one thinks what. One of them thinks there's no korban for meila, so what are we even talking about? So we had to say that Rabbi Meir, right? We had to flip it and then say that when Rabbi Meir responds to the rabbis, Rabbi Meir is saying, I don't agree with you at all. I think there's no korban, but if you say there's a korban, don't you agree with me, though, that they would combine? And the rabbis basically say no, based on what Rav Pinchas had said earlier, because Shevuot are chalukot lechataot and konamot are not. Okay, that's a review. Now we're going to go to our three questions that I mentioned we're going to back to, two of Rava, one of Rav Ashi. The two of Rava will be unanswered. The one of Rav Ashi will have an answer. I'm a Rava. Shevuot shelo ochal ve'achal afar. We saw this was going to be an issue. So I take an oath I'm not going to eat, and then you eat afar, and then you eat dirt. Now, dirt is not edible, so patur, because when you said I won't eat, what you meant was I won't eat food. You didn't mean I won't eat inedible items. So if you put dirt in your mouth, you're not liable. But by Rava, what if you said, though, Rava asked, what if you said, Shvuah shelo halafal? I swear I won't eat dirt. Bekama. How much dirt is a chila here because it's not edible? Do we say it's not a chila and anything? Or do we say you use the language of a chila? Chila means kazayit, even if it's not something edible. So when are you going to be liable? You're going to be liable only if you ate a kazayit, or are you liable at any amount? Kevan de amar shelo ochal, here are the two sides. Since you said I won't eat, kazayit, you must have intended an olive bulk. O dilma kevan de lav midi shehu bekolshu. Since this is something that's not edible, what you meant is I won't even eat a little bit of it. Teku, no answer. And that's what we said before. If that, we would have had an answer to this question. Now, moving on, by Rava, second question. Shvuah shelo ochal hartzan. I won't eat the grape pits. Bekama. Now, nobody really eats grape pits by themselves. However, you do eat grape pits in the grape. Sometimes you eat them. So, kevan bitachil al yedei ta'arovet, since you eat them in the grape, if you're eating grapes, maybe when you said I won't eat grape pits, you meant kazayit, regular eating, da'atea kazayit. It's all a matter of what you intended. But odilma kevan de lo be'ine, sorry, kevan de lo be'ine achlele, since you won't eat them on their own, then achlele nashe, people don't eat them on their own. Da'atea mashu. Maybe you intended any little bit. Maybe it's like the afar case. Teku. We don't know. By Rav Ashi, third question. Nazir shamal, shvuah shelo chal chartzan. A Nazir says, I won't eat chartzan. Now, the Nazir already is forbidden to eat a chartzan from becoming a Nazir. So now they take an oath, I'm not going to eat a chartzan. We go back to this whole mushba v'omei mehar sinai, right? You're already sworn in, right? You can listen to Alana's Shiur if you haven't listened yet. Part one of this, part two will come out next week. Bikam, how much? De kevan, de kazayit isura d'oraitu, since kazayit is asur mid'oraitu already for the Nazir, he kamishtaba, ahetera kamishtaba. Do we assume if you took an oath, you must have been taking an oath to forbid something additional? And what you meant is even b'mashu, right? B'datei amashu, o dilma, or do we say kevan de amar shelo ochal? Since you use the word shelo ochal, datei kazayit, and if it's kazayit, well, there's no shvuah because ain't shvuah chalal shvuah. You're already commanded not to eat a kazayit, and now you said not a kazayit. If you were saying mashu, that wasn't forbidden to you by Torah law, and then the shvuah would actually be applicable. So, Tashma, let's try to learn it from here, and we're going to learn it from the next Mishna, which we're going to also read today. Shvuah shelo ochal, if I say, I swear I won't eat, and we actually saw this whole sugi yesterday, v'achal nebelodu trefot shkatzim uremasim, and then you ate non-kosher food. Chayav, v'Rabbi Shimon poter. There's a machloket in the Mishnah whether you're chayav or pater. Well, Ravina, they asked about the rabbi's opinion. Am I chayav? Mushba v'omei mer Sinaihu. Right, you're already commanded from our Sinai. Why would you be liable here? So Rabbi Shmuel Rabbi Yochanan, which isn't really important for our purposes, but an interesting opinion in and of itself. Da'amrei bekolel dvarim amutarim im dvarim asurim. The reason why this applies, and you're going to be liable for going against your oath when you eat the non-kosher food, besides also transgressing, right, the Torah law, is because when you said I won't eat, there was room for it to be chal on, right, there's two sets. There's sets of kosher food and non, like if you think of math and sets. There's a set of kosher food, a set of non-kosher food. You said on the whole thing. Now, since there was a set that it was applicable to, it applies also to the other set as well. That's their approach. But we have a different approach of Rish Lakish. Rish Lakish, if you remember, had this bit of a complicated thing. It sort of depends whether you're the rabbis or Rabbi Akiva, depending on what you think an oath applies to. Does it apply to a mashu or does it apply to a kazayit? Okay, so if you say, okay, say ela be ela. Now, if you hold that you need a requisite amount, that to be liable, it's only a requisite amount, then really there's no shvuah shelo ochal non-kosher. You already can't eat non-kosher kazayit. So if you're mefaresh, remember the rabbis agree with mefaresh. If you're mefaresh chatzi shiur, you say chatzi shiur means anything less than a shiur. You say I'm not going to eat any little bit of morsel of food. Now, that little bit of non-kosher food is actually not forbidden to you because you can only not eat a kazayit of non-kosher food. That's why it applies. So if you're a liable Rabbanit, if you're going with the rabbis, it would be mefaresh chatzi shiur, where you said ibistam. Now, according to Rabbi Akiva, anytime you take a shvuah, it's on a mashu. So of course it'll apply to non-kosher food because non-kosher food at mashu isn't forbidden, right? But it is in your oath, so you won't even have to specify. You could just say ibistam. Shvuah shelo ochal ochel obviously includes non-kosher food because there's somewhere for the shvuah to go, which is on the mashu, which wasn't forbidden to you by Torah law yet. So ibistam alibi to Rabbi Akiva da'amar adam oseretz ma b'koshu, because Rabbi Akiva thinks b'koshu. Now, what does that have to do with? Well, hanavela de mushba v'omei mer Sinai. Now, because of that, it's like the chartzan, the chi chartzan, the gabi nazir damya. It's just like the chartzan for the nazir, which is mushba v'omei mer Sinai at a kazayit, and now you're forbidding it, right, at a lesser amount. So tama de parish. Now, what did we say? According to the rabbis, it's only if you specify. We don't care about Rabbi Akiva now. We're trying to give the mainstream opinion. Halo parish. If you weren't specifying, what do we see here? Datea kazayit. And if it's your standard is a kazayit, because non-kosher food is like the chartzan for the nazir. It's also non-kosher for him. So it means you really intended a kazayit unless you specified, according to Rish Lakish anyway, and therefore shma minan. Therefore, this shvuah would not be chal. There's an answer to Rashi's question, because the shvuah is on a kazayit, and you're already forbidden a kazayit, so there's no shvuah here. Ella, okay, according to this, now we can actually answer question number one about the afar. Ella tifsho to buy Rava shvuah shelo chal afar b'kama. Tifsho adika kazayit. Because why? Well, nevela, the hanavela, ka'afar damya. V'tama de parish, halo parish da'atea kazayit. Well, non-kosher food is just like the dust. You can't eat, right, or dirt. You can't eat dirt, and you can't eat nevela, right? One is inedible, but one is forbidden. So, if we say that the inedible food of non-kosher food is at a kazayit, must be that afar is also. To which the Gemara says, no, those two things are not the same. Lo afar la barachilahu klal. Nevela ba'arachila va'aryehu derivia ilave. Afar is inedible. Okay, it wasn't fair that I used the term inedible by non-kosher food. It's not inedible. It's just the way they describe it is great. It's like there's a lion who's crouching upon it and you can't get to it, but it's definitely edible. It's just you can't eat it because of laws of kashrut. So that's not the same thing, and therefore you can't learn from there. We don't have an answer to Rava's first two questions. Okay, now we're going to get to this Mishnah. Try to go through quickly. It's pretty straightforward, very easy Mishnah, and it repeats many cases over and over. You always have this question when you get to a Mishnah like this, why they have to tell us in so many different ways. Shvuah shelo achal. Okay, I won't eat. The achal v'shata, and then what did you do? You ate, and then you drank. Are those two separate things? No, eno chayav ela achat. But shvuah shelo achal v'shelo ashteh, ve'achal v'shata chayav shtayim. But if I said I won't eat and I won't drink, then this is what we talked about before. Chalukot l'chataot. I said I won't eat and I won't drink with one language of shvuah, but I get a separate korban chatat in each one for eating, one for drinking. Okay. The first part, by the way, assumes, and this is the first thing we're talking about in the Gemara, that drinking is part of eating. When I say I won't eat and then I eat and drink, I'm liable one, but it basically assumes drinking is part of eating. And that's going to be a whole sugya in and of itself. How do we know that? Shvuah shelo I said I won't eat. And then what did I do? I ate 3 different loaves of bread. Achal pat chitim, pat sorim, pat kusmin. Okay, grain, wheat bread, barley bread, and spelt bread. Eino chayav elecha. It's still one eating. But shvuah shelo pat chitim, pat sorim, pat kusmin. If I say I won't eat this bread and that bread and that bread, ve'achal, and then you ate each one, chayav kol echad ve'echad. Okay, you're getting the gist. Each one you have a separate korban chatat. Obviously, you ate these all and forgot you took the oath and all that. Shvuah shelo eshteh, I won't drink. V'shata mashkin arbein, you drank a lot. Eino chayav elachat, you're only liable one. Shvuah shelo eshteh yain v'shemen v'dash, I won't drink wine, oil, or honey. V'shatan, you drank each of the 3 of them. Chayav kol echad ve'echad, you're liable for each one. Okay, those were all basically the same idea. Shvuah shelo ochal, tomorrow's daf is going to go through all these things and why you need all those things. Shvuah shelo ochal v'achal ochalin she'en ruyin la'achila, and then you ate inedible foods. You drank inedible drinks. Patur, you're exempt. That makes sense. That's not called eating. We've already learned this a lot. Chayav and Rabbi Shimon Poter, he exempts. Last line in the Mishnah, Amar konam ishti nehenetli imachalti hayom. My wife will be konam ami, I will be forbidden to benefit from her if I eat today. And then what did you do? And then you ate things that are forbidden. Did you mean eating anything? Yes. Okay, because it's edible food, it's just you're not allowed to eat it for kashrus reasons, but you ate it, your neder applies. Okay, Gemara starts off with this big question or comment. Amar Rabbi Akiva bar Abba Amar Shmuel, Shvuah shelo achal v'shata chayav. He infers from this Mishna that if you say I won't eat and you drank, you didn't eat food, you drank, you'd be liable. If some people say it's just logical, and some people say it's learned from a pasuk, or you could learn it from a pasuk, you could learn it from logic. It's not exactly logic, but it goes back to what we were talking earlier. Okay, I'll go with Eric's thing. When if somebody says to his friend, "Let's go get a bite to eat," okay, what do you mean, right? Let's eat a bit of something. What do you go? You go and eat and drink. You don't just eat; you also drink. So that means that your language of eating includes drinking. And we're going to learn from the pasuk that also eating, the word eating includes drinking. It says eating, and it mentions wine. Tirosh is wine. From there you see eating includes liquids. Okay, so we have it from pasuk, we have it from this. This is a discussion that's going to continue into tomorrow's daf. So we did a bunch of things today. We started with these 2 lines in the Mishnah. Rabbi's line to Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Akiva's line to the rabbis. Are they really hold true? And in the end, we said they did. We went to 3 limitations of the machloket, 3 cases where they don't debate. Okay, and the last one being the konam. And from there, we got into a whole discussion of the konam. We raised this contradiction between Rav Pappa and the braita and resolved it in 2 different ways. From then, we went to these 3 questions. 2 were left unanswered about whether inedible foods or forbidden foods would be asher was your achila mina kazayid or not. And then we got to Rav Ashi's question about the nazir who forbade the chartzan. Was it already forbidden to him? Was it not? Right? Did he mean a kazayid? In which case it wouldn't be a shvuah at all, or not? And they always said yes, is a kazayid, but that doesn't help us to answer the earlier question because there's a difference between non-kosher or forbidden and inedible. Okay, and then we went to the Mishnah with a whole bunch of different cases, and we don't need to review them. We just learned them, so we'll end here. Wishing everyone a Shabbat Shalom.